Hey guys, James Wilson Taylor here for Roxanne. It's another of our video calls. We are catching up with everybody while we're all at home at the minute, and I'm delighted to say from Rise Against, Tim's on the line. How are you, Tim?
I'm good. How you doing?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. Nice to see you. And I'll start this off as we've started every single one of these off, which is to, of course, say I hope you're keeping safe, you're keeping well, or I hope all your family and everyone doing the same. How has this lockdown period been for you over these last few months?
Yeah, it's been. The pendulum has swung back and forth. You know, good things, bad things. I'm sure it has for everybody. It's been like this kind of collective like sigh for society. I feel like just kind of taking stock of where you are personally, where we are as a world. You know, and then I think that there's different things. There's opportunities in this, and then there's also a lot of sadness in this as well. But in the end, a lot of it's definitely challenging humanity to do some problem solving.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Hopefully some positives will come out of this within the next year or so. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, man. But in the meantime, it's really nice to chat to people like yourself, especially when you're in a lucky position where you're able to put out new music. And let's start there and get right into it. This new track's out there, Broken Dreams Inc., and it's part of Dark Knight's death metal. Now, it's an incredible project, this. It's really, really cool sounding thing. How did you get approached to get involved, first of all? And are you a comics fan?
So I was a comic fan growing up. I definitely I was riding my bike to a newsstand with my little brother, with our allowance and buying comics and candy, For me, it was like a lot of, remember G.I. Joe and like Punisher and that kind of stuff. I always felt like there was something about reading, like, especially the Punisher comics, that like you were reading some like grizzled war vet's diaries, It felt
Sure.
like, it felt rated R to me, you know what I mean? So as a kid, it was like, whoa, like, do they know I'm reading this? And then I'll be honest, I didn't follow comics or graphic novels after my adolescence. And so this whole process has been been me being reintroduced to what's been happening, kind of catching up to speed, like where comics has gone since like the 80s, when I was getting into it and to now. And obviously it's gone in a lot of cool places. And this thing has made me want to, I don't know, kind of figure out more what's happening out there, because the Dark Knight series and the death metal series, it's really interesting. There's a lot of, they're dealing with this multiverse. There's a lot of things flipped on its head. There's a lot of societal, there's a societal aspect of it where they're talking about what's happening in like the human condition too. So I found that stuff really compelling. And how we got involved was just through our label, Loma Vista. They signed up to basically cultivate the whole soundtrack. And so when they approached us, we'd already been working on this song anyway, and it seemed to be like a great pairing with the Dark Knight.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it something you kind of already had in the chamber there? When did this song kind of start developing then, before the project came along?
That is I can't put a finger on when the heck it's, because we're always working on music, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So there's always songs that are always coming. This was actually, I remember this one being an idea that was over a year ago, but then by the time I got around to really focusing on the vocals and the lyrics, it wasn't up until closer to the release. So it's one of those pieces of music that like sits in like a gestation period for a long time, and then I finally got around to just grabbing onto a vision for the song. But as a band, we've never written a song like for like a soundtrack specifically. It's just not something that I think that we do. But it was kind of eerie, even before we knew what was happening in this graphic novel, how many things kind of lined up sort of serendipitously, and that made it all the more interesting.
Yeah, what kind of changes had to be made? Because even thematically looking at the song, and you put out statements and stuff when it was coming out, but it's touching in areas you've touched on before. There's talking about power and the business and government influence and all these kind of things, and it fits incredibly well into the themes of a corrupt Gotham City and all the things that we're seeing within the project. What did you kind of have to tweak, or was it just this is a song we were going to explore these themes anyway, and like you say, kind of serendipitous?
Yeah, nothing was tweaked. It just kind of all happened that way. I think that in this process, what I've learned, and like I've talked to the people involved in making the artwork. I talked to the writer. I talked to people that are doing the soundtrack. And so it's been kind of a learning experience because like I said, I came into this, I'm not going to pretend like I know the comic world, because I really don't. So I came into it as a student of it, you know? And I think what hit me, the kind of light bulb moment that hit me about like this song, what we do with music, what they do with the comics, is that we tell stories. You know what I mean? The song is a story. The comic is a story. And storytelling in a lot of ways is like maybe the only way to get people to really listen to what you're saying, especially in such a polarized world that we live in. Like you know, and I know that the chances of you changing how you feel or how you believe to agree with the person that's trying to argue with you, the chances of you switching teams like that are pretty slim, right? And the chances of the person that you're arguing with, you know, about how what you think, how you believe, the chances of them switching teams because of what you say to them, that's very slim. You know, like we're pretty entrenched in our tribes, right? And so the idea is, or the question is, how do we find some sort of line of communication? And to me, like the answer that I've settled on is storytelling, stories. It's stories that get people to really think about how they feel about something, their preconceptions, their biases, and then get them to maybe change their mind. And so as artists, you know, that storytelling comes in so many forms. Like we do it in music, you know, DC Comics does it in their stories, in their artwork. You know, a novelist writes a book, a journalist writes something, you know, a painter, you know, creates something. Those are all stories. They're all telling a story. And so like, we're just simply, I guess, like tradesmen and tradeswomen that are sort of in the same business. We're in the business of telling stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old adage of a show don't tell, really, isn't it? It's actually putting it out through a story, like you say. Yeah, very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, it's such an exciting project, and like you say, it must be kind of interesting to, you know, like you say, you haven't been a lifelong comics fan necessarily, but I imagine a real newfound appreciation for how this works. I mean, talk to me about actually getting to see these artists and kind of go, I guess, a bit behind the scenes of something this ambitious.
It's really incredible. I've met, I've Zoom called with,
of course,
you know,
such is the time. Absolutely,
such is the time. Yeah. Yes, right. I haven't shaken any hands with anybody yet. But Tyler and Bates and Greg Capullo, who did the artwork, Tyler did the soundtrack, and it was really interesting getting kind of a peek into their world, especially the artist, because he's, you know, what he's creating, like, you know, he's you're getting this sort of description of the character, maybe, you know what I mean, in a storyline. Then it's the artist to sort of use his or her imagination to put that into something really compelling, and to see what people come up with. That's the power of the imagination. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of imagination happening in this thing. And that's the same thing we do with songs, is that like you pick up a guitar, you know what I mean? And you look at it and you say, what do I want to hear? What does somebody else want to hear? Like, what do I want to say to this song? How do I want to be heard? How can I be heard? You know, and you use your imagination to create something out of nothing at all, you know, out of thin air. And that's kind of art. And so I was excited to meet those guys and learn about their process, because, you know, my world is so just music centric, music focused, you know? And so it was interesting to see a lot of the parallels that we have in sort of creating that art, especially art that purports to have a message, you know what I mean? And even though, like, I don't know if those guys would fly the same banner that Rise Against flies, but like, if you look there's a message there. There's an important story being told.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's such an exciting project to follow, and still so much more to come from it by the looks of it. So yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on what they're doing over there. It's very, very cool. In terms of other stuff, man, I just want to generally catch up, because I see you've done a few at-home type performance things like many people are doing. What I've asked a lot of people is really about what were the challenges there. It's been really fascinating to see how loads of different bands approach it in all the different ways. How was it for you guys getting the guys together and coordinated and all that stuff? How did it work?
Oh my gosh. I guess, like, I'll try to sum it all up. What you need to know about Rise Against is that we're sort of Luddites. We're like, you know, the four of us, you know how, like, I mean, you've interviewed a lot of bands, right? And so there's always like the one person in the band who loves tech stuff,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that person is great at the studio and has the microphones and knows how to mix things and self-record. Rise Against never found that guy.
Oh man, is it just muddling through for you? You all got the manuals out? How's it working?
It is a lot of muddling through, a lot of phone calls, a lot of like frantic phone calls to the probably the blasting room in Colorado, you know, where it's like, how do you do this? How do you turn this on? You know, I'm like, I mean, I'm doing this call on my phone on my child's tripod that like she uses for like TikTok dances. You know what I mean? So like that's like, yeah, the tech world is definitely, I'm not the one that should be in charge of it. And we've been so spoiled, you know, we show up, you know, if you guys show up to a show, you have the right microphone, the right headphone, all the tech, you know what you're doing. and so we've been sort of spoiled with like all the tech around us. And so that's been a process. I will say I've learned a few things in the process. So, and I think that going forward, we're probably going to be doing more of these things too, right?
Great.
So, just knowing more about it and how to present it well and seeing what bands and artists are doing, you know, and the best way to communicate. It's been a trial by fire a little bit. So yeah.
You're far from alone in that though, man. Like I say, everyone I think has found their own way forward, forged their own path. It's good to see you guys doing the same now for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're trying our best.
Hey, you got to try, man. You got to try. Well, I mean, looking ahead as well, I mean, we're all very hopeful for next year. And there's a couple of things I want to ask you about. First of all, you're coming back over Download Festival, which is always such a brilliant point in the calendar. Must be always a huge thrill to come over to the UK in particular. But Donington's another level, right?
Absolutely. That's like, I have such fond memories of that festival. We've played it, I don't know how many times now. And it's such a, I don't know. It's one of those places where it sort of restores your faith in kind of like rock music and heavy music. And it sort of lets you know like that no matter what a journalist is telling you or someone's telling you about like the music scene, you walk out to download it, you're like, oh, this is all you need. You just need this right here. This is perfect. We do this once a year and this is great.
Yeah, definitely been missed this summer. Looking forward to it next year, man, for sure. It'll be very, very cool. And also looking forward to next year. You know, I like to ask people about when we cross certain milestones in people's careers. You know, I know they don't necessarily mean a huge amount in terms of the longevity and all that kind of stuff. But next year, correct me if I'm wrong, are we looking at what, 20 years since the first album? Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I think because it was 2001, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I will say historically, it has always took somebody else telling me when the anniversary is. So this is no exception. These are how anniversaries happen in my mind. Somebody else lets me know that there's an anniversary. But yeah, I guess the Unraveling would have come out in like 2001, and so that would be 20 years. Yeah, you've done your homework.
There we go. I try to remind people of these because it is always really nice, even in a small way, when we see artists like yourself try and market. I know that especially in these times, the amount of people trying to do like, even in a live stream show, just playing more songs from that album than they necessarily would and things like that. Have you guys thought, well, I guess not if I'm breaking it to you, but is that something you think you might consider finding some way to mark that? Because it's 20 years since the debut. That's a big achievement.
Right. Oh man, does somebody want to hear the 16 songs from the Unraveling from 2001? I mean,
I think you'd be very surprised. I think you'd be very, very surprised.
I guess we'll have to weigh those concerns. I mean, we would never rule anything out. You know what I mean? Like I love, especially, you know, we've been a band for so long, and you know, 8 albums later, there's so many chapters in our story, you know, and there are so many people that jumped on board at different points, you know, and so the records mean different things to different people depending, you know, who you were, where you were when you jumped on this train that's been going since '99. And so that's something that I've tried to have a lot of like respect for, is knowing that like my perspective on the records is entirely different than like, you know, the 16-year-old kid who first discovered our 4th album, you know what I mean? Or maybe 2 records ago was the most important record. And so like paying homage to those records and the music, that's important to me, you know, because like I think that's something this whole pandemic has done too, is that as everything has sort of slowed down, it's allowed me to, for the first time, to kind of look back over who we are, what we've done. And it's been interesting and like humbling to like see all like, wow, like we were really busy. We made a lot of records and we played a lot of shows. And like a lot of times you're just in the eye of the hurricane and you're not seeing everything around you. You know, you're just focused on the next thing. And then by the time you finish one thing, there's one more thing to do. And so this has been a period of reflection for me too. And so you bringing up the Unraveling, it's like, yeah, like those records were all such important building blocks to who we are, and building blocks deserve that attention.
Yeah, it's been such a kind of recurring theme in all these conversations because, of course, in your line of work, having this much time at home and actually some time to reflect, that's a very rare thing. Like, it must be kind of a bit of a culture shock in a way to suddenly go, oh, yeah, I can look back and reflect for once.
Totally. I'm sure that, you know, you're interviewing a lot of people in music, and they're all probably saying the same thing I'm saying, where this is the first time I've been home, you know, for 6 months in a row since I was about 22 years old, you know? And so that's something that, like, I'm not used to, my family's not used to, my wife isn't used to, you know, like all of those things. Like there's always a plane ticket, you know, waiting for me, like to go somewhere. It's always the next thing I'm preparing for. And so to have this sort of like, I don't know, I keep calling it an early retirement. It's like, it just feels like that sometimes, you know? Sure. It's been an interesting thing, but like I said at the top of the call too, just there's opportunity here, I think, for people to really take advantage of this moment to kind of find some clarity on what you want to do moving forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's wrap it up with that. What do you guys think will be coming next? Have you got any more? I mean, like you say, you're always writing stuff. We just put out this track. Has this period been a fruitful creative period for you guys as well?
It actually has been, yeah. So we have not been just sitting around. We've not just been hanging out on Zoom calls. We've been creating music. And so there's music out there, and we're looking forward to sharing with the world.
Nice. I don't want to push you too hard because I like surprises, but any idea where you think we might end up hearing that? When do you think, do you have a rough timeline for yourselves?
No, I mean, the timeline kind of keeps changing as the world keeps changing. We're just going to keep reading the same headlines you're reading and kind of figure out, you know, where to best to jump back on board this ship.
Right, but there's music coming and there's music there. And is there a handful of tracks actually finished, done and dusted, or are you still at demoing stages? What kind of space are you at?
I probably already said too much, but just so you know, we have not been lazy.
Okay.
We've been really creative, and we're looking forward to sharing the next chapter with Rise Against fans.
Very exciting to hear, man. Very exciting to hear. Well, with that, Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. All the best to you and your family. We look forward to seeing you back in the UK whenever that may be. And just look after yourself, man. We'll catch up with you soon.
All right, you too. Thanks, man.
Good to chat to you. Right, Tim, everybody.